So as Dr. Prashant already mentioned, the outcomes are that at the end of the session, participants will be able to explain the nature of assessment and general issues and understand the development of assessment plan, explain the development of test items corresponding to COs, then very briefly explain the basic concepts of assessment for learning and assessment for discrimination. These two are also extremely important, and we'll just have a brief discussion of these ideas. I know that all of you are familiar with outcome-based education, but however, to set the context for this talk, because we are going to discuss assessment in the context of the outcome-based education framework. Very briefly, just 3-4 minutes, let me do a quick recap. So, outcome, what the learner is able to do. Notice the emphasis is on do. So that means that the learner must be able to demonstrate, and what the learner demonstrates is observable by the teacher and measurable by the teacher. Both are extremely important. We should be able to measure and put a number there. So what the learner is able to do at the end of the learning experience. The learning experience could be the entire program, or it could be a single course, or it could be even a 2-hour, 3-hour instructional unit, or it could be even a special lecture that you have arranged for your students, or it could be a field trip on which you have taken your student. It could be any kind of a learning experience. But the end of the learning experience, students must acquire certain capability and must be able to demonstrate that. So what the learner is able to do at the end of the learning experience. Then very briefly, for some time we were calling a course as actually a program. We would say, for example, a nursing course, or we would say a arts course. There actually what we meant at that time was that it's a program. But now the terminology is very clear, both NBA and NAC. Program is a well-defined academic activity of certain definite duration, which leads to a degree. So we have a 4-year BTech program, a 2-year MCA program, or it could be a 3-year MSc program. So it's a well-defined duration, and the academic activities are all well-defined for that. And the course is what earlier even now some people call it as a subject or a paper. But the current terminology is to call it as a course. So if you are having a particular subject called fundamentals of managerial accounting, then that becomes a course. So the course usually is over a period of 1 semester. So that has a well-defined duration, a well-defined syllabus, and a well-defined mechanisms of assessing that as per the regulations. So that is the confusion that we should not have. A course is what you call as a subject or a paper. A program is the entire activity leading to a degree. Then accreditation, a kind of quality certification by an agency. In India right now, we have both the National Board of Accreditation and the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, NAC, doing the accreditation. Of course, the National Education Policy 2020 is talking of a new mechanism for accreditation. Let us see what will happen at that time. Then within the outcome-based education framework accepted both by NBA and NAC, we have program educational objectives, program outcomes, program specific outcomes, not always, but in some programs, program specific outcomes, and then course outcomes. Program educational objectives is at the highest level. What our students would be engaging in 4 to 5 years after taking the degree and leaving our institute. So it's a kind of a slightly median term, what the students will be able to do. Program outcomes mean what the students are able to do just at the end of completing the program, whether it's a 4-year BTech or 3-year BCom. At the end of the program, what competencies the students can demonstrate. They are program outcomes. Then sometimes when the name implies diverse programs, like when we say BTech, the BTech could be in electrical and electronics engineering, or it could be in computer science and engineering. So there could be a large number of programs all going under the name of BTech. Then what we do is we also indicate what specific competencies the student is able to demonstrate by virtue of the fact that she is a BTech in electronics and communication rather than a BTech in instrumentation technology. So they become program specific outcomes. Of course, for certain programs like B Pharmacy, there are no program specific outcomes because the entire program is standard for everyone who gets into that program. So we'll have only program outcomes. For a BA, you could have program specific outcomes also. BA in history would be different from BA in Sanskrit. So there would be program specific outcomes. Then course outcomes. A specific subject or a paper studied over a period of a semester. At the end of that, what are the competencies that the students can demonstrate? They become the course outcome. Obviously, what we do actually is only teach courses and of course other co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So the outcomes from these courses and co-curricular and extracurricular activities would contribute to the attainment of POs and PSOs by the students. So the activities that the students engage in would be mostly courses. So our focus again would be mostly on courses, that core courses, not elective courses. So the course outcomes would contribute to program outcomes and program specific outcomes. Then to state these outcomes, it's always helpful to have some kind of a taxonomy, a classification system. So we need a taxonomy of learning, teaching, and assessment. And we have a very large number of taxonomies world over. We do have, for example, the Solo taxonomy. We have the Fink's taxonomy, Marzona and Kendall taxonomy. So there are a large number of taxonomies, but somehow in India, the revised Bloom's taxonomy has become so popular that more or less it is the de facto standard today. So we are going to assume that we are following the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And as you know, revised Bloom's taxonomy is two-dimensional in nature. On one dimension, we have the cognitive process, 6 levels, and another dimension, we have the knowledge categories, 4 different categories. So the cognitive process dimension has the categories of remember, understand, remember is lowest level, gradually increasing levels. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. These are the 6 levels of cognitive process. Then on the knowledge dimension, we have factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. And of course, in engineering courses, perhaps some of the institutes introduce additional knowledge categories specific to engineering, quite possible. But broadly, this is the revised Bloom's taxonomy framework, and we assume that we are conducting our programs using this taxonomy. Then there are differences between a university or autonomous institute and an affiliated non-autonomous institute in the way the assessment can be done. The regulations of the affiliating university or the regulations of the autonomous institutes could be quite different. So that will impose certain constraints on how we could do the assessment. We'll discuss some of the constraints. There could be many more constraints. Then we need to briefly understand that there is a quality cycle both at program level and at the course level. We define the outcomes, then we set certain targets, target levels for attainment of those outcomes by our student. Then we implement the course or the program, measure the actual level which has been attained by the students, and based on the set target level and the actual attainment level, we initiate an appropriate action, which is called as the closure of the quality loop. If we have not been able to attain the target, planned target, they need to improve the way the course is delivered or the program is delivered. And if you attain the target, then we need to become more ambitious and perhaps raise the bar and set a higher level of a target. So now I will go to the main topic, my topic itself, okay? Which is the first outcome is explain the nature of assessment, general issues in assessment of learning. Please note that what I have said is only a quick recap, assuming that all of you are familiar with OBE, just to set the context. Otherwise, that would consume its own time. maybe 3 hours. Now let us look at the course level. What are the major issues? As a teacher, all of us have these issues to face when we are asked to teach a particular course. Like if we are teaching the first level course in statistics, or if we are teaching a course in evolutionary biology, then what would be the issues? So the three issues are what we want our students to be able to do at the end of the course. I must be clear about that. What I want my students to be capable of doing at the end of my course on design and analysis of algorithms. That is what I have to be first clear. So I write the course outcomes, which state what my students should be able to do at the end of completing my course. So that is course outcome. Once I am clear about what my students are supposed to be capable of doing, then I have to think what kind of learning experiences do I provide to my students so that they become capable of achieving those competencies. So what learning experiences do we design and provide to our students to facilitate their attaining the stated COs? Notice that this is just not syllabus. We have to think about how the syllabus is to be delivered, what kind of learning experiences are to be provided, and how they have to be sequenced, what kind of interaction must happen in the classroom. All this is part of that. So very broadly, you could call that as instruction. Okay. And then finally, how do we determine the extent to which our students have attained these stated COs? We have stated the course outcomes. We want our students to be able to do those things, achieve those abilities. Then at the end of the course, we need to determine what is the extent to which actually our students have attained those stated COs. That is the objective assessment. And this is important for the students as well as for the teachers. Because if they have not attained those outcomes to the planned extent, then I have to see what I should do next time I offer the course so that they are able to attain higher levels of those outcomes. And for the students, that will get translated to grades. So it's important for all of us, for students as well as teachers. So, and obviously these three must be aligned to each other. The assessment really must assess the outcomes, and instruction must really facilitate the attainment of the outcomes. So there must be alignment. So this is broadly the issue that we need to face when we are teaching a course. And for the current session, we are looking only at assessment. We are not looking at how to write the course outcomes or how to plan the instruction. There are serious issues that we must engage in, but that is a different issue. Okay. And broadly, there are three types of assessment. One is what is called as summative assessment or assessment of learning. What is the extent to which our students have really attained those outcomes? Assessment of learning. We also have assessment for learning, which is essentially assessment to help the students in their learning. So it's also called as formative or diagnostic or educative assessment. Here, the objective is slightly different. We'll briefly look at this towards the end of this session. Then we can also have assessment for discrimination, where our objective is to discriminate the learners as high achievers or low achievers, whichever way you want to call. The focus would be on placement. This is again quite distinct from assessment of learning or assessment for learning. We will discuss these later two aspects, assessment for learning and assessment for discrimination, very briefly towards the end of this session. So the focus is basically assessment of learning, uh, also known as summative assessment. And this is used to award grade or marks to the student. And computing the attainment of COs is based on the results from all forms of summative assessments only. The diagnostic assessment is good for helping the students with their learning, but we don't use those results in computing the attainment of course outcomes. So from the accreditation perspective, the attainment of course outcomes is computed based on the summative assessment only. So we need to document that process very carefully, and this plays an important and necessary role in closing the quality loop, because that is what tells us what is the extent to which our students have attained these stated outcomes. And this is so important, so much so that assessment is understood by many to mean only summative assessment, not assessment for learning or assessment for discrimination. In fact, when the word assessment is used without any qualification, normally everyone means summative assessment, and I will also use it in the same way. So whenever I mention unqualified term assessment, I mean summative assessment, fully aware that there can be diagnostic assessment also. But unqualified term assessment will mean only summative assessment. So generally, a couple of quick issues let us dispose of, some kind of reality check. Generally, grades are top priority for students, whatever we say, because they are important for their career, either for going for higher studies or for getting a placement or whatever it is. Because there could be a very, very small number of students who do not bother much about grades, but generally, grades are a top priority item for the student. So all components of assessment, all forms of summative assessment, which have implications to the grades, are sources of great stress for the students. There is no doubt. Particularly during this pandemic time, we have seen how students really were under tremendous stress when they had to face the assessments. And it's a true fact that any assessment with implications for grades will be a source of stress for the students. There is no doubt about it. But at the same time, assessment is also the yardstick by which students generally learn. Students generally plan their studies based on the kind of assessments that they expect to be conducted. So most often their studies would be dictated by their perception of what is expected of them in the assessment. So assessment is the one which more or less most of the time drives the students' learning. So for the teachers, assessment is the only tool available to drive quality of learning. That is the only way we can drive quality of learning. So quality of assessment drives the quality of learning. If my assessment is very weak, then there is no motivation for the student to really enhance the quality of his or her learning. So quality of assessment drives the quality of learning. There can be always exceptions, I do agree, but I am saying by and large, the state of affairs. So thus, our assessment items are what you call as the questions. Tell the students what we consider to be important for them to learn. So it's a kind of a signal to the students. These are the things that I'm going to ask, means that these are the things I expect you to learn. So it's a kind of a signal to the students. The kind of assessment items tell the students what is considered as important for the students to learn. So it becomes the glue that links the components of the course, COs, content, and instruction. And contrary to some popular beliefs, that's why assessment is extremely important. We have seen several videos on social media, including WhatsApp and Facebook, where they say that assessment is all useless and don't worry about exams and all that. No, everyone has to worry about exams and assessment because that is the only mechanism available for us to drive the quality of learning. And if our assessment is not measuring the learning of the students, not that assessments should not be there, but it means that the assessment is not aligned to the outcomes. So we should try to improve the assessment, and we cannot really say that they are not important. They are extremely important. That is the basis on which we can drive quality of learning. One, two, that is essential for closing the quality loop. It is essential for us to know what is the extent to which they have really attained those outcomes. And if they have not attained, I should do something to improve the way the instruction next time when I offer the course. Otherwise, I would have no idea. I might be thinking I'm doing a very good job and leave it at that. But then if the attainment of COs by the students is very low, then I am not able to get any feedback. So it is very essential even for the teachers that assessment is done. Assessment item and assessment instrument. These are the terms generally used in the literature on assessment. And by the way, there is a vast amount of literature available on assessment. Question plus additional related information is generally called as the item or assessment item or test item. This additional information or tags There can be quite a variety of tags, more than about 20-25 tags are possible. But the most important tags that we should do would be the time expected to be taken by an average student to answer this question. We need to think about it carefully and write down that time. Because often what happens is if you don't consciously pay attention to this, then we can end up with setting a assessment item, designing an assessment item, which places unreasonable demand on the student's time. So we must uh, pay conscious attention to the time expected to be taken by an average student. Then we should also provide a sample answer in case someone else is doing the evaluation and correcting the scripts. So what kind of answer is expected? Then if the question requires certain hints to be provided, yes, we must include them in the tags. Okay, some additional data to be provided in the form of a data sheet. All those hints must be given. Then we must also have tags including the course outcome. To which course outcome is this question related? So we must tag the question with the relevant course outcome. And what is the cognitive level? Cognitive level of this question. And then what is the knowledge category, if you wish, and the difficulty level, if you wish, you can. But at least the CO and cognitive level must be tagged. Okay. Then notice that difficulty is different from the cognitive level. Difficulty essentially would mean the amount of time and the number of concepts which are involved in the question. Then an assessment instrument is a structured collection of assessment items, or what you can call as a question paper normally. But a more technical term is assessment instrument. Examples can be quizzes, midterm tests, final exam, assignments, mini, main projects. All these things would be called as assessment instruments. Then we do have a wide choice with respect to the assessment items. There are many more types than the popular closed book exam or quizzes. So some of the things we'll see. But the important thing is to align the assessment to course outcomes. That is extremely important. It must measure the stated course outcomes. So if the CO is something and if the assessment item is unrelated to that CO, then the assessment is fruitless. It doesn't serve any purpose. So it is the key is to align the assessment to the course outcomes. But that needs considerable effort from the part of the teacher. So we'll see some examples coming up. Then assessment design and development ideally must follow the writing of course outcomes. Once you write the course outcomes, immediately you must think, how do I assess whether the student has attained this outcome or not? So if you are not able to answer that question well, that means the CO is not written well. So the moment we write a CO, it is stating some competency that our students must be able to demonstrate. Then I must ask, how do I assess whether my students have attained that capability or not? So this I must be able to answer. So once you write the COs, we must immediately go ahead and design the assessment. So ideally, it must follow the writing of the course outcome. Then we can go to the design of instruction. How do I design my instruction so that the students get an opportunity properly to attain those outcomes and demonstrate them? So the design of instruction must come next. So the proper sequence is design of COs, then design of assessment, then design of instruction. That is how we must come through. And then types of test items, a variety of types are there. We are familiar with most of them. Selection type, where the response consists of making choices from given alternatives. Your standard multiple choice questions or fill up the blanks, all these come under that category, match the following. Then supply type, the response consists of giving short or long answer to a question, particular question. So the answer is not there for the students to pick up, but the students have to retrieve the answer from their long-term memories and respond. Then there can be performance test items. They are not written test items, but performance test items. For example, the student has to make a presentation, come onto the stage, dais, and make a presentation. So that is a performance. Or the student has to conduct an experiment, that is a performance. Or the student has to come onto the dais and do a role play. like in most of the management courses we have, then that is a performance. So there can be performance traits item. The importance for that is that the way you assess and evaluate performance test items is quite different. You need appropriate rubrics which are communicated with students upfront. So the design of rubrics is a separate issue by itself. But we must be aware that if you have a performance test item, then we must develop rubrics and share them with students upfront. Then the variety of assessment items already we saw. So it can be the quizzes and then assignment problems, simulations, laboratory experiments. Quite a wide variety is there. Field work, report, a term paper, a presentation. So a wide variety. So that's about briefly the assessment. So now let us start looking at the serious issue of how do we develop an assessment plan. This is quite general, applicable to all kinds of programs and all kinds of courses. Essentially, it means that how do I plan to measure the attainment of the outcomes by my students? So I need to plan this, and that needs considerable amount of upfront thinking. So to ensure alignment of assessment with COs, you must tag each CO, as I mentioned, with cognitive level. We are suggesting the acronym says R for remember, U for understand, AP for apply, AN for analyze, E for evaluate, and C for create, assuming you are using revised Bloom's taxonomy. And of course, some institutes number them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even that is okay. But then this is much more meaningful because the acronym immediately allows me to recognize what is the cognitive level. But if you have some kind of a regulation or norm or a practice of using numbers, that's also okay. Or some people call them as L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. That's also fine. It's up to whichever is the common practice, you can do that. Okay. Then the knowledge categories, conceptual, procedural, etc. Then to which POs and PSOs this CO is related. Right now, that's not of much importance in this session. But later, if you are worried about how to measure the attainment of POs and PSOs, you would need this information. So you better tag the COs with this also. Then I'm suggesting you also tag it with approximate number of instruction sessions. That means in the instruction plan, or some of you call it as lesson plan, whatever name you give, which is a kind of plan that you are having on which sequence, which lectures for how many hours, covering which topics, like that some plan is made, a lesson plan or instruction plan. According to that, how many sessions you are planning to devote to the material related to that CO. That doesn't have to be exact. Now, why do we need that information? I'll come to that presently. It has a bearing, and that is quite useful. And for us also, it is quite useful because upfront we'll know how many sessions do I devote to a particular CO. And when I add up all these things, thus must match the credits. For example, if you have a 3-credit course, assuming 15 instruction weeks or 16 instruction weeks, whatever be the standard in your institute, we know that we are having about 45 or 48 total sessions available. So I must plan how much time do I devote to each CO. Without that, what happens is quite often we go very slowly in the beginning and towards the end, there is a big rush. So there will be uneven pace at which the information is covered, which is bad for learning of the students. So it is good to think upfront and how many sessions you are planning to discuss the material related to a particular CO. You think upfront and tag it also. So that would be a good indication. This is one sample. Of course, I have taken a course from an engineering program, a BTech in Electronics and Communications Engineering, but you could take any course and you don't have to worry about what is there in this slide. Really, the content is immaterial. But what is important is that there are 6 COs and which are the POs and PSOs related to that are written here in this column. Then what is the cognitive level? that is mentioned, tagged. So these are all at understand level, the remaining are at apply level. So they're only at two levels, understand, apply, fine. Then these are the knowledge categories, factual, conceptual, etc. And this is important. Notice that I'm writing down how many sessions do I plan to use to discuss the material related to that CO. And this has an integrated laboratory, that is both theory and lab go together in this course, 3:0:1. So I'm indicating how many sessions, 3 classroom sessions and 0 lab sessions. Here 9 classroom sessions and 4 lab sessions. Notice this doesn't really exactly calculated and put it. A kind of ballpark figure we should mention. When I'm actually delivering the course, it is quite possible that I'm able to complete this material in 8 sessions rather than 9, or I mean in 10 sessions rather than 9. It's okay. There is no problem. But we need some kind of a ballpark figure. And when you total them up, it must come to the correct number. 40 plus 28, 68, it must come to the correct number. So what is the assessment plan? How do I really plan to conduct various assessment instruments and deliver them and measure? That is the idea. But the actual method of assessment varies dramatically from institution to institution. There is a wide variation. There is a very large variation. But assessment can be broadly divided into continuous internal evaluation. This is called by several names, like in-semester evaluation, in-semester assessment, variety of names. Whatever we mean, that is done by the faculty in the department spread over the entire semester. That's what we mean. Then at the end, there is one final examination, which is called a semester end examination or FAT, or again, varieties of names are there. So whatever we mean, at the end, there is one exam. And the relative weights given to these two also vary dramatically. They may range from 20/80 to 60/40. So these are all contextual factors. And much of the assessment requires still written responses. In Indian context, a vast majority of the assessment is still based on written responses. And ensuring the quality of assessment requires very careful planning upfront. That's what I keep emphasizing. Okay. Now, the number of assessment instruments that can be used and the variety of assessment instruments allowed depend on the regulations, guidelines provided by the institute affiliating university, or even strict regulations. Like some universities say, conduct exactly only 2 tests and give the marks. Some say conduct 3 tests and take the best 2 out of them. Some say you can hold up to 2 quizzes and 1 assignment or 2 tests. They all vary dramatically. So there is no uniformity across the institutes in India. So everywhere, of course, for that matter, there is a lot of freedom. But what is important is that taken as a whole, whether it is tests and quizzes or tests and quizzes and assignments or only tests, whatever it is, taken as a whole, the internal assessment must address all the COs adequately. That is important. That means every CO must be assessed, either in a test or a quiz or an assignment, it doesn't matter. But, or it could be done in 2 quizzes, it doesn't matter. But taken as a whole, the assessment must address all the COs adequately. That means enough weight must be given to the assessment items related to that CO. And this requires a lot of planning upfront. Actually, when we discuss this planning, it looks like a lot of detail. And sometimes my friends start criticizing me, saying that so much detail, why do you want? Yes, there is a lot of detail, but that ensures that at the end, you have a quality assessment. And of course, all this is only once. Once we do it, in the subsequent semesters, it will only fine-tuning it. In fact, in the entire outcome-based education framework, most of the work happens the first time. Subsequently, it will be only some fine-tuning, some little bit revision here and there. So initially, yes, the planning does take substantial amount of time, and it looks like fairly detailed. But the advantage we get is that the final assessment plan will ensure that all the COs are addressed adequately and the assessment has good quality and they are aligned to the COs. So if it looks too much of a detail, please bear with it with me, and you will realize the value of it once we do it. It provides an objective basis. Okay. So broadly, there are 3 steps. First is Based on the available guidelines, the instructor must finalize the details of assessment instruments to be used and the schedule for administering these instruments. How many quizzes, how many assignments, how many internal tests, and when they have to be administered. In some institutes, this is centrally decided. The principal's office issues a dictum saying that quiz 1 must be held on these dates, quiz 2 on these dates, test 1 on these dates, test 2 on these dates, like that. So the entire thing is dictated centrally. Fine. If it is there, we'll accept it. But if the teacher has the freedom, then the teacher must finalize these details. Now we'll see that there are some constraints as well as some care that one has to take with respect to this. Once this is done, for each CO that we have, we must decide three things. First, marks to be allocated to this CO out of the total marks for CIE. For example, if there are 6 COs, CO1 to CO6, and if the total CIE is for 40 marks, out of that 40, how many marks will go to CO1? How many to CO2? Like that, first we must decide. That is taken as a whole. Whether it is covered in a quiz or in a particular test, that's a different next story. But first we must decide. That ensures that every CO gets appropriate importance. So finally, we end up with only 2 marks for one CO requiring 12 hours. Then we have already allocated 14 marks for a CO that requires only 4 hours. This kind of imbalance should not exist. So we must say marks to be allocated to the CO out of the total marks. Then how these marks are to be distributed over relevant assessment instruments. If you are planning to address CO1 in quiz 1 and test 1, then how many marks will be there in quiz 1, how many marks will be there in test 1. Then the cognitive levels. If the CO is at analyzed level, will you have all assessment items at analyzed level only? Or will you have some assessment items at a lower level? These decisions you have to take. Notice these are all the decisions that teacher must take. Then finally, decide how these marks are allocated to the assessment instruments already planned for given CO. So that really gives you the structure to all your CO, all your assessment instruments. So first is, as I said, you have to plan for the schedule. And if it is given centrally by the university or the principal, fine. But if the teacher has to plan it carefully. And you must plan the schedule also. The only constraint is that when you are planning a particular assessment instrument, for example, test 2, and that is planned in week 13, that means that whatever you can address in test 2, those COs must already have been dealt with by week 12. At least 1 week grace you need to have. So that is the only care that you must exercise. And the marks we are saying is out of the total of 50. But it doesn't mean that actually you have to conduct the assignment or administer the assignment only for 5 marks. You may do it for 25, but then you scale it down to 5. So what I'm showing here is the scaled down values where the total must come to 50. So you can see here the total comes to 50. 2 tests and then 2 quizzes and 2 assignments. So 30 plus 20, 50 marks total. The actual test also could be administered for 50 marks. Scale it down to 50. So what I'm saying is, after the scale down, what should be the values? And when you want to conduct this, that you must have. And this must be compatible with your instruction plan. Then we must work out how many marks for each CO. That is totally teacher's discretion. But instead of making it quite arbitrary, you could make it slightly objective. And 2 criteria that you can consider would be this proportion of classroom hours devoted to the CO. That's why when you tag it with classroom sessions, it becomes advantageous. If you are spending a lot of time in a semester on material related to a particular CO, it stands to reason that more marks should be allocated to that CO. That is why you are spending so much time. So the marks allocated to that CO should in some sense be related to the number of classroom hours proportional to that. It doesn't have to be exact, but some relationship should be there. It should not be the case that I'm spending 14 hours on material related to a particular CO, then in the total internal assessment of 40 marks, the questions related to that CO are only for 4 marks. It looks very unfair to the students also. Then of course you can modulate those numbers based on your subjective assessment of the relative importance of the CO. If you want, you can slightly adjust them, but finally it is your decision. One example I am showing, total number of classroom sessions is 56 and the number of sessions devoted to a particular CO, CO5 is 8, that is 14%. Total CAE marks is 50, so 14% of that is 7, but I perceive that to be very important, so instead of 7, I make the marks as 10. Fine. No one is taking away the teacher's discretion. It's not that teacher's autonomy, teacher's freedom is taken away. Teacher always has the final say, assuming that you have the freedom. If the central authorities dictate the things, that's a different story. So then the completed allocation, total CAE is for 50. Then for CO 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 6, I am allocating 8 marks each. For 5, I am putting 10 marks. This decision you have to take first. Then, once you have decided that, then we have to see which test instruments or assessment instruments will address these COs. That means, how do you distribute these marks over the relevant assessment instruments? Again, this is a choice of the instructor. The only constraint is that if a CO is to be addressed in a particular assessment instrument, you have to look at when you are administering that assessment instrument. And by that time, the material related to this CO must have been completed. That is the only constraint. For example, T1 is scheduled for week 7. Then your lesson plan or instruction plan indicates that CO6 is planned for weeks 12 and 13. That means by the time you are conducting test 1, you have done nothing, no material related to CO6. So obviously, you cannot make TO1 address CO6. So that's very intuitively clear, but you take formally that into account carefully and plan. So this is, for example, a valid plan. CO1, my total marks are 8. I am planning to have 3 marks in quiz 1 and 5 marks in test 1. Similarly, CO6, total marks 8. I am planning to have 3 marks in quiz 2 and in assignment 2, 5 marks. That means I am having no test addressing CO6. Perhaps my rationale is that CO6 comes very late in the semester, and by that time my test 2 is also conducted. I don't have any more time for conducting any more tests. So I plan to address that in an assignment. Fine. You have a choice of conducting a test and addressing CO6. Fine. You decide, but you decide this upfront. Then we'll have to look at what is the cognitive levels at which the assessment item is going to be formulated. Normally, it is expected that the cognitive level of the test item matches the cognitive level of the CO. If the CO is at apply level, we expect that your question is also at apply level. If the CO is at evaluate level, we expect that the assessment item is also at evaluate level. But however, in practice, for a variety of reasons, we do ask questions at lower levels. The CO might be at apply level, but I'm likely to ask certain questions at understand level also. There can be a variety of reasons. For example, I may wish all the students to get at least some marks, and I wish to test if at least the students have understood it. If they are not able to apply, at least have they understood that. So there can be a variety of reasons why I wish to have questions at a lower level. But having all the questions at a lower level is a very bad quality. In fact, the NBA teams or any NAC teams look at the question papers and see what are the cognitive levels of the questions. If the COs are at one level, and if all the related questions are at lower level, then it will be generally considered as a poor quality assessment. That's obvious also. We need to assess the CO, which means the questions must be at the right cognitive level. How many questions you can ask at lower cognitive level? There is no rule, but a kind of a thumb rule, you could say, approximately less than 40% you can devote to lower levels. That means at the same level, you must have at least 60% of the weight given. So if the CO is for 10 marks, at least 6 marks must be at the same level. Remaining 4 you can do at lower level. So for example, total of 10 marks for CO5 and the CO5 is, let us say, at apply level, then at least 6 marks we should have at apply level. Because you are free to make it 8 marks, or even 10. That's great. If you are able to have all the questions at the same cognitive level, wonderful. But for any reason, if you are deciding to have questions at lower cognitive level, please ensure that the number of marks does not become too much, not more than 40%. Because in some institutes, they may say it can be only up to 30%. Fine. If you already have a regulation, great. Formal or informal, by practice, that's also okay. But pay attention to this upfront. Decide how many marks you would like to have based on the CO, the nature of the CO, and the nature of your students. You have to make this decision. But never have all the questions at lower cognitive levels. That is no. The maximum can be up to 40. It may be only 30%. For example, here I have decided to have 4 marks at lower levels. Within the levels of understand level 2, 2 marks at remember level. So this looks like a lot of detail, but it ensures that my assessment is really of good quality. So then finally, we need to say which assessment instrument. So T2, apply level 6 marks, understand level 2 marks. So I'm planning to ask in T2 questions related to CO5, and in that there will be questions at 6 marks level, 6 marks for apply level, 2 marks for understand level. Then there is going to be 2 questions or 1 question in a quiz 2, and that will be at remember level. So that is the summary, and this is how a final document should look like. For each CO, what is the cognitive level? In which assessment instruments you are planning to cover? For example, if you see CO2, I am planning to address that in T1 and Q1. In T1, there will be a question at 5 marks understand level, and in Q1, there will be 2 marks at remember level, and in assignment 1 also, I am planning to ask 1 bit at 1 mark level. So this looks like a very complex job, but it ensures that your assessment is of good quality. And once you prepare it, subsequent semesters, you need only to fine tune a little bit. That's all. If you are not happy with the allocation, maybe instead of 8 marks, you would like to make it 7, that adjustment you can do. But this is the summary of the assessment plan that you should do. And semester end exam, practically it is the responsibility of the university in the case of non-autonomous institutes. Autonomous institutes are themselves responsible for this, but there is only one SEE, only one exam instrument, which means that the distribution of marks over different instruments does not arise. Only thing we need to worry is how many marks at what cognitive levels. And even if you are a non-autonomous institute, it's likely that you are participating in question paper setting as a member of board of examiners at the university level. So it's important for everyone to become familiar with this plan. So for each CO, allocate marks for SE, how many marks, and then relevant cognitive levels. They are the only steps that are required. In the same way as we did for JE, the rationale is same. Only thing is here there is only one instrument. So there is no question of distributing marks over several instruments. So there can be a wide range of patterns in question papers. Earlier, we used to have 5 questions out of 8 questions. That was once common, but now it is rarely used because it is very poor in terms of getting information regarding all the COs. Then today, the more common one is 5 out of 5 questions. The choice is internal. Or there can be an objective section for 20 marks, and the remaining 80 marks are again 5 out of 5. But there could be some other patterns. Whatever it is, whatever your regulations say, you have to follow that. But you must decide on the marks and the cognitive levels. So here you can see there is an internal choice. Item A and B means it's internal. Either I have to answer question 1 or question 2. So I have decided to have at understand level 6 marks and again 4 at understand level like that. So basically, the idea is that once we have this plan, the question paper that we produce will be really addressing all the COs correctly, both in terms of appropriate cognitive level and in terms of the number of marks. Otherwise, generally we get complaints that the question paper was good, but it was too lengthy, or the marks given for this particular question were too low. All these kinds of things will crop up. And important thing is choice. Be careful about the choice because the choice should not lead to any gaps in addressing these COs. For example, if I have three questions related to three COs in a particular test, and I ask the student to answer any two questions, then it's quite possible that all the students will skip the question related to CO3. So they will answer only first two questions which are related to CO1 and CO2. So I end up with a scenario where I have no information whatsoever regarding the performance of the students with respect to CO3. So I do not get any information regarding the attainment of CO3. So that is a very undesirable way of providing the choice. Or I do give a choice in such a way that whichever two they pick up, all the COs are addressed, fine. But with one choice, CO3 gets only 2 marks. In another choice, CO3 gets 10 marks. That's also bad. So your choice must be designed very carefully. Ideally, it's internal choice. That's the best one. That means one question, answer this or this. Both of them address the same CO at the same cognitive level, at the same difficulty, and carry the same marks. So whichever part the students answer, you will get same kind of information regarding the performance of the students with respect to that CO. Then worse still, some universities and some institutes still say that take best 2 out of 3 tests. That can lead to a lot of problems in the measurement of attainment of the COs. If a majority of the students skip the third test, and if the third test only is addressing some CO, then we get no reliable information regarding the performance of the students with respect to that CO, which is again very bad in terms of computing the attainments. So choice must be planned very carefully. I do realize that there are regulations governing it, but within that, the best way that we can provide choice, we should think about it. So then finally, test items corresponding to COs. Uh, Unfortunately, this is an area where there is no cookbook recipe. They must be aligned to COs, that is clear cognitive level, and highly domain specific. The kind of test items that you design for a maths course are quite different from the kind of test items you design for a literature course, which are quite different from the kind of test items you design for an engineering course. Very domain specific, but the general suggestion is collaborative effort always helps. If 3, 4 faculty who are teaching it sit together and plan all these upfront and come out with some kind of assessment items which they could use in a pool, a kind of an item bank, that would be very helpful. And peer review is always helpful. Once you set the questions, always get them reviewed by the peers. In fact, an internal assessment question paper, once you set it, you should always get it reviewed by the peers to see whether the questions are properly framed, they address the correct COs at correct cognitive levels, and they are assigned reasonable marks. All this, a peer review always helps. You must have a process for that. So here we are going to discuss only some general approaches, and definitely the final decisions are all highly domain specific and contextual. Remember, extremely simple among all the things, because essentially it is recalling some information or recognizing some information. So only issue is what kind of a difficulty level. Some examples are given: time complexity of mid-sorties, multiple choice question, or state Schrodinger wave equation. It's a keyword-based recall. Schrodinger wave equation, that is the keyword. Based on that, a student simply recall from the long-term memory and write down the equation. Or Tagore was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year, fill up the blank. So just the student has to memorize and reproduce. What is the number of the last article in the Constitution of India? So these are all just what they mean is that it is stored in the memory of the student, and the student has to retrieve it or recognize it. So fairly straightforward kind of question setting. But the only danger is that the complaint that many recruiters and industry people say is that most of the question papers end up with only remember type questions, which does not really test the competency of the students correctly. That is what the complaint is. We can have certain remember questions, but ensure that they do not dominate the question paper. Understand is a little bit more difficult. Many times what we really say is understand turns out to be only remember. Uh, in general, explain, describe kind of a questions. Most often they become only remember. Because in the textbook or a guide or some kind of a notes, there is a portion which really is related to explain. So students can simply mark them by brackets, memorize it and reproduce it without really understanding anything. So these kind of questions, write short notes on, explain, describe, these kind of questions really do not test the understanding. So much better would be assessment items based on reasoning, troubleshooting, or predicting, or classifying a new instance, etc. So this requires a lot of care in advance. Tomorrow is the test. Today, if I start writing the question paper, setting the question paper, it's very easy to simply say, write short notes on or explain. But then really they will not correspond to the COs, proper cognitive level of the COs. And even good understand level questions, they become remember type if you repeat them year after year. So the juniors will tell the seniors, oh, Rajanikanth is teaching the course. Then he will ask this question. So it becomes only remember. So which means that we must creatively come up with new questions every time we are teaching the course. This also requires a lot of planning upfront. Just one example, two examples I'm showing. Explain thrashing is not all that good. The student may not understand even what the thrashing word means. But in the textbook or guide, there is a place thrashing. What is thrashing? Then below that, there is one paragraph answer. So the student simply memorizes that answer, reproduces it without understanding what it is. So this kind of keyword-based questions, that means describe, then there is a keyword, or explain, and there is a keyword. These kind of questions generally are not good to test at understand level. They generally become remember level kind of questions. Okay? Describe the working of a two-stroke petrol engine. Generally, they are not very good because people simply memorize them. A much better version is don't use the word thrashing anywhere, but the concept is related to thrashing. So, for example, in a virtual memory system, processor utilization improves monotonically with increasing degree of multiprogramming. Do you agree or disagree? Justify your answer. Notice that in this entire question, that word thrashing is not appearing. So unless the student has really understood what thrashing is, the student will not be able to answer this question. So if the student is able to answer this question well, it means that the concept is understood. Similarly, compare transcription and translation in genetics. This is not a very good type of question. Better perhaps is to ask for some specific outputs with justification. Okay? Which are the following are products of translation? Which are the products of transcription? Explain your answer. So this allows the teacher to assess the understand correctly. Then apply is relatively simple because a procedure has to be applied. But if you want to test the apply at the other end of the apply spectrum, okay, where you are talking of implement, then we have to think somewhat more carefully. Perhaps we can start one way and then gradually alter the conditions. Okay. So start with the traditional binary switch, but modify it slightly, which you are not really discussed in the classroom. So the student has to really apply the concept and procedure modified. So instead of returning a failure, you can ask them to return a specific value. Or you can start with a standard question that lists some transaction and ask the student to use accounting equation to determine the effect of these transactions on assets, liabilities, and capital. This is a very standard form of question in any accounting course. But don't ask it in that fashion because then the procedure simply is known and the students have to plug the numbers. But slightly modify it. For example, you can list the transaction and list the changes and tell which is related to which one. So I'm just certainly giving certain samples. You as the domain experts can come out with much better examples. Only thing is that don't make it too standard. That is the only thing. Okay. Analyze generally is very difficult because it takes quite some time. So best is to take the take-home activity. An assignment, if it is allowed, it's best. But if it is not allowed and you have to do it in a test only, then you have to really struggle to produce correct one. In humanities courses, analyze is very easy to do. But in a course like mathematics or engineering, it is very tough to come out with analyzed questions. In general, science, mathematics, engineering, these kind of courses, very difficult to use, analyze. In humanities, it's very easy, but you must plan carefully to ensure that it is really at analyze level and not at understand level. Evaluate is still tougher. As you go to higher level cognitive processes, setting questions is itself very difficult. That generally these kind of the implement of apply, then analyze, evaluate, and create. These are called as HOTS, HOTS, higher order thinking skills. They are very difficult to assess. LOTS, lower order thinking skills. Remember, understand, and execute of apply. They are relatively easier to assess. That challenge is always there. Again, if you are allowed assignments, you can set beautiful questions. But if you are not allowed assignments, then you have to really struggle to come up with appropriate assessment items. And create is highest level, very difficult. Generally, you cannot expect the student to come out with something radically new in a limited time. Most of the time, what we say design is not really design, but apply a procedure. And it's not fair also. In some 20 minutes, you cannot ask the student to come out with the original idea, generally. But in some management courses, yes, they give a case study and ask the students to come out with a new marketing plan. But then the time is more. They will have at least something like an hour or 1.5 hours to do that. Even then, in those courses, they're trained to do that, so they can do. But again, in most of the hard courses, like engineering or science or mathematics or even commerce, it would be very difficult to come out with creative questions. So they can be done in some kind of a project work, take-home group activity. But again, this needs a lot of planning upfront. So in general, assessing HOTS, higher order thinking skills, requires a lot of thinking on the part of the students. And so much so that, in fact, in many colleges, we ask the teachers themselves to take the question paper of the last semester, end semester question paper, and ask them to look at the question paper and discuss what is the cognitive level of the associated CO and what is the cognitive level of the question. We did not intervene, we just only watched. And all the faculty, they did discussion among themselves and then came out with, for example, in one college in Vizag, an end semester question paper on software engineering. The COs are at various levels. They were at apply level, analyze level, evaluate level even. But the entire question, believe me, the entire question of 120 marks was at remember level. Okay. So the faculty themselves burst out laughing and said that we never really realized that our question paper was of such a quality. Okay. So that kind of a thing can happen. To avoid that, this upfront planning is what is required. So then we come to the other to explain the basic concept of assessment for learning and assessment for discrimination, last outcome. As I said, a majority of the time we think of assessment as assessment of learning only. But assessment for learning, also known as formative assessment or diagnostic assessment, is also being realized as extremely important these days. Particularly after the outcome-based education has become popular and accreditation has become necessary, people have realized that we must do assessment with diagnostic purpose in mind. That means we are assessing not to award a mark or a grade to the student, but to understand what are the difficulties that the students are having in learning and attaining that particular CO. So primarily the purpose of this assessment is to identify the sticky points, the points where the students get lost. So what you do is you set up questions which allow you to infer what are the difficulties that these students have. And the feedback from such assessment is useful both for teacher and student. Teacher, if she realizes that majority of the students are getting stuck with that concept, they're having a wrong notion of that concept, they have misunderstood that concept, then the teacher can see how to modify the teaching learning activities. What else can the teacher do to make the concept clear to the students? For the students, it is also beneficial because they know where they are going to make mistakes. So they can spend more time trying to hone their skills or trying to consolidate their understanding of those concepts. They can put the necessary extra effort. So it is useful for both of them, but it requires again careful planning. The questions must be designed in such a way that by analyzing the responses of the students, you can figure out whether they are doing a misconception, whether they are having a misconception. So things like concept inventories are used, where there is some kind of a distractor, an answer which looks almost correct, but if really the students have understood the concept correctly, they will realize it's not correct. But it looks like a correct answer. So that kind of questions you can design. And then by looking at the answers, you can figure out where the students are having difficulties. Okay. So ideally, such formative assessment should not have any impact on the final grades because the whole purpose is to figure out where students are having difficulties. But in some cases, some teachers do feel that when I say these tests have no bearing on the grades, students don't take it seriously. So they would like to give some marks for that. It's fine. It's the individual teacher's decision. And one of the challenges is that if the class strength is large, let us say 60 or 70, then doing this frequent assessment for learning becomes very taxing on the teacher's time and energy. So the best is if you got good information and communication tools, some kind of a learning management system or some kind of an automated tools, which perhaps Dr. Prashant will discuss, then it becomes easy. If you have such tools, you administer them. Make use of ICT to administer these assessments for learning as often as possible. So nowadays, this has become very important. In fact, this was coined way back in 1967 in the context of school education by Michael Scriven. But it took a lot of time for the assessment for learning to enter into higher education context. But extremely useful, and you should integrate that into the education system. There are challenges how to design test items and then time and energy required to do this and giving the feedback quickly. That is very important. If you conduct an assessment instrument today and give the feedback after 15 days, it's no good because that is related to the topic. Best is in the same class, at best by the next class. You must be able to give them feedback where they are making the mistake. Then only the students can improve, and teacher also will immediately be able to take steps to correct that misunderstanding. So delayed feedback is of not much help. So the best is, as I said, availability and familiarity with relevant ICT tools. That is the one which is the key. Then finally, assessment for discrimination. This earlier we never considered, but now that a lot of campus placements are happening in all types of institutes, this has also become important. Here, the primary goal is to discriminate. So they're kind of filtering the students. 150 students have applied, and we want to select only 20, 130 students are to be turned back. So we design the assessment not to assess the quality of their understanding, but to reject some of the students. So the objective is not selection, but rejection. So because of that, the test items tend to have some kind of a traps, unusual twists, some kind of a mines where they step on it, it explodes. So the whole idea of this assessment is how to trick the student into making a mistake so that they can eliminate them. So that is fine for placement agencies. But in a regular assessment, formative assessment or summative assessment, teachers should not resort to this. See, my idea is not to trap my students and show them, see how clever I am. That's not my objective. So honestly, I would like to assess what is the extent to which they are able to demonstrate their competency. So avoid this kind of unusual tests in regular assessments, either summative or formative. Like a structure in C programming language defined one way and accessed in a different way. This we teach is a bad style. But in placement related, we do ask them to understand how the students are able to think deeply kind of a thing. So it's all domain specific, but generally my suggestion is that have that as a separate activity. But it is important because students have to get placement, they have to do well in the campus placement tests and all. So this kind of assessment for discrimination also, students must be familiar, become familiar. But my suggestion would be that make that training as a separate part. Probably in assistance with training and placement cell, set up a separate program, perhaps beyond the college hours, to train the students in doing well in such discriminatory tests. in doing well in such assessments. That is, make them familiar with the kind of traps that can exist in the question, how to spot them, then how to answer correctly in those contexts. So provide a separate kind of a training and provide separate experience with such assessments. Do not combine those things with your regular summative or formative assessment. Very important, this assessment, no doubt, placement focus are extremely important, but treat that separately. Okay? Suitable teaching and learning activities must be planned independently, perhaps with the help of training and placement cell. But this is also important, and teachers must pay attention to this aspect also. Okay. So with that, we come to the end. 422. Fine. So in terms of conclusions, no silver bullets, no magical solutions. We teachers have to struggle. There is no escape from that. But we should challenge the students without intimidating them. But a decisive shift in focus from teaching to learning has already occurred. Outcomes drive the process. So the entire assessment must be aligned to the outcomes. Every single question that we ask, every instrument that we design, we must keep the outcomes in mind and ensure that there is a proper alignment. We need multiple strategies, and then expectations of all stakeholders also have changed today. If the question paper is not of good quality, students are giving immediate feedback that this question paper really does not address the stated COs, or they are at very low level, cognitive level. They are giving, many colleges, they are giving that. Then assessment of learning alone is no more sufficient. We must integrate assessment for learning also into our education system, not only of learning, but for learning. Then training and assessment with placement focus needs to be planned separately. I'm sorry about the background noise, but it is raining very heavily in Bangalore, in our area. And whatever closing I do, still the sound fades in. Innovations in assessing student performance and using the assessment aligned to outcomes. Notice assessment aligned to outcomes, that is a key word. To adapt teaching learning processes have become very essential. And definitely academic autonomy helps a lot. Without academic autonomy, we are really in fetters. There are too many regulations. It becomes really frustrating sometimes, I know. But we can't help if we are not autonomous. Within the available regulations, if we are familiar with all these ideas, we can try to do the best uh, within the freedom that is provided by the existing regulations. Finally, I would like to repeat, quality of assessment drives quality of learning. So any time that we spend on designing good quality assessment pays itself extremely well in terms of improved learning by our students. And of course, you can put any number of such conclusions, but it's very important. So there are several resources available, Journal of Engineering Education and similar journals, Journal of Higher Education, Journal of Critical Thinking, like that. Then websites of teaching learning centers of several universities, Carnegie Mellon, Purdue, North Carolina. These are some of the universities which have been pioneers in improving the assessments. So you have concept inventories and other tools available in these sites, and they are freely available, open source tools, they are all, and you can make use of those documents. So please visit these universities, particularly many others, but these are particularly good. But once you go there, you can find other universities also. Then placement related websites, you have any number today, which show the kind of tricks that the placement agencies can play. So you can train the students well. Then most important, answer scripts of your own students over the years. It's a treasure house. You look into the answer scripts of your own students of past exams, they can give you enormous amount of information regarding the kind of mistakes that they make, the kind of misconceptions that they have, the COs which trouble them, the places where we have to spend more effort. Enormous amount of information you can gain by really scanning the answer scripts of your own students over the years. It's an extremely valuable resource that we should make use of. Similarly, projects carried out by your own students over the years. So that will tell you what kind of benefits can come in, what are the shortcomings of those projects, how we can improve those activities. So there are plenty of resources available, and we need to make use of them appropriately. And for every domain we have, whether it is a physics or chemistry or it's engineering subjects, analysis of algorithms, or whether it is even history, commerce, any domain you take, there are resources available for all this. So we need to make use of these resources and ensure that we are able to help our students attain the stated outcomes so that they come out with greater level of competencies. So that is our responsibility as well as our job. So with that, I conclude and I thank you all. So I think I took slightly for 5 minutes more than what I was really planning.
No, no issues, sir. I mean, it's perfect. It's just perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Now,
Yeah.
any questions you have, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, yes. So first of all, on behalf of Mastersoft, I express my gratitude, sir, that you have agreed that you will be sharing a time with us, that you have agreed and you have spared your valuable time with us, and the session was really immense. I am continuously getting the the response from the participant that the session is amazing, excellent session. Can you share the presentation? So
Sure.
couple, yes, yeah. So I am just I already had a word with sir, and we will be sharing the presentation that the sir has delivered today is with all of you, and I will be also shortly posting the feedback links with all the participants. So post filling the feedback links, you will also receive the certificate as well as the presentation for today's. And thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. Now let's move on to the QA session, wherein there are a couple of questions which participant has asked in the chat. I'll take one first, and meanwhile those who are having a question, they can just raise the hand. I will unmute them and you can directly ask a question to the sir. Yeah, so sir, very first question was generally what kinds of questions we can ask when we are conducting an open book exam.
Open book exam is much more challenging both for students and the teachers. And in fact, in IAC, we were scared when our teacher was saying, I'll conduct open book exam. So we were saying, sir, please conduct closed book exam.
Closed book exam,
but
yes.
Basically, open book exam should be in such a way that it allows the teacher to assess the deeper level of understanding as well as application challenge, which means that picking up any kind of a question for which the answer is a straightforward application of a procedure demonstrated in the open book resource is a no-no. We should never do that. Which means that actually the teacher has to spend more time to come out with a question whose answer requires the students to really demonstrate deeper understanding or think about how the procedure needs to be modified or how the analysis has to be carried out at a deeper level. Which means that any question for which the answer is straight available book or even on a website is no good. Like for example, in engineering courses, you might think that you are coming out with some novel question, but then you pose it on Stack Overflow, immediately you may get an answer. So those questions are no good because the moment you say open, you are allowing them to access all resources. Unless you have blocked the internet access, that's a different story. But today, generally, it doesn't happen because on a smartphone, you can easily access. In fact, we have seen that even for regular questions, if you are doing it in online mode, students can do this. So you must design a question for which the answer is not immediately available on any open resource. So bring in a little bit of variation in the assumptions made and then ask the question. So that is how you should set up a question if you are doing open book question.
Okay. Sir, one more question as participant has asked in chat is, what is the key difference between evaluation and assessment?
Actually, assessment is more like, yeah, it's a very good question, sir. Actually, technically, assessment is actually determining what is the level of students' response. Evaluation is interpreting those results. Strictly speaking, technically, evaluation is not really correcting the answer scripts. So it is done, the marks or scores or whatever is there. How do you reinterpret them? What is the meaning of those scores? So does it mean that the student has achieved this CO or not achieved this CO, whatever it is? Or if you are doing assessment for learning, does it mean that the student is stuck here? So evaluation is really interpretation of the assessment. And assessment is really measurement of the performance. So this is a distinction, but unfortunately we are using them in a very informal sense by combining it. But technically, these two are distinct.
Yes, yes.
I hope it answers.
Yes. Okay, I request participants, if there are any specific question they wish to directly ask to sir, kindly raise your hand. I will unmute you and you can directly ask the question, whatever your concern to the sir.
Actually, I have more elaborate presentation, but because of the time constraint of 1 hour 20 minutes, I modified it. Otherwise, usually I do this for 3 hours, 3-hour session. So I had to eliminate some of it. So if you're really keen about it, you can inform Dr. Prashant. I will share the more detailed PPT with him and then he with you.
Yeah. Okay, so one participant has asked this. Yes. Sir, you can now unmute yourself.
Sir, excuse me, sir. So I would like to ask one question regarding the CO attainment level. How to calculate the CO attainment and PO attainment, and how to do the mapping of CO and PO with regard to the OBE.
Sir, you are asking a question.
I was expecting this from your presentation, but you didn't cover that topic about CO.
Sir, you are asking a question which is an entirely maybe a more than 3-hour session.
With that
but to brief that, actually I will be just showcasing a 5 minutes showcase of the software wherein all this CO-PO attainment is going to happen. Maybe that 5 minutes is thought to be a benefit for you. Sir, your opinions. Yeah,
actually, each is a separate session, sir. We have one session on CO attainment, 1.5 hour, one session of 1.5 hour on PO attainment. But very broadly, just to state in a nutshell, what you do is that you design your assessment related to that CO, and then the performance in that assessment will indicate what is the extent to which that CO is at. Then you do the mapping of CO to PO based on the number of hours as well as the relevance of the competencies. And then for a particular PO attainment, calculate the attainments of all the relevant COs and then pay it suitably. That's how you do it, to just state within a minute. But each is a separate session by itself. So perhaps some other time we can do that.
Sir, my doubt is, should we take into account both continuous assessment and end semester assessment for this CO attainment?
Huh? Yes, you have to take both.
Both?
You have to take both.
Okay.
You have to take both. Sir.
Okay.
So there is one more raise hand by SS Hubli. I'll unmute them.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Sir, for an SEE conducted by a board or a university, how a individual faculty can ascertain the CO-wise performance of the students in the SEE to analyze his attainment analysis and understand how best the students have performed CO-wise?
Agreed, sir. Extremely good question you asked, and there is no way, because if it is a tier 2 institute and that is a non-autonomous institute, and if the university is only the final score of the student, there is no way we can break it up into individual COs. Just it's not available. So what you could do is that assume that it is uniformly same for all the COs, and any difference in the CO attainments gets reflected in internal assessment. So that is the only way we can do, which is an unfortunate scenario, but the reality is like that. The university actually could share, but it is not sharing. Most of the universities, they do not share any information regarding individual response of the students. They will give you only, in fact, some universities even do only grade, which means you would not even know the marks. You have to convert grades back to marks. So there are challenges like this for non-autonomous institutes. I agree with you. Non-autonomous institutes will have this difficulty. So what you could do is that treat the marks as uniform for all COs as same. Then any changes, you assume that they get reflected in the internal assessment. That is the only thing you can do.
Sir, further, Yeah, when the performance of the student in an SEE, say for example, out of 100, the student scores 75, and
Okay.
we take 75% performance for all the COs.
Yes.
That's what you said.
Exactly.
But,
that is the only thing you can do.
Yeah,
That's not correct, but nothing else.
Yeah. Now, one clarification that I would require further is, all the COs will not have the same weightage as far as the whole course is concerned. Like you said, 6 COs for a course.
Yeah.
Then each CO is having its own weightage out of the all 6 for that particular course. Then will it be scientific if we consider that weightage distribution for the COs and the performance of the student in the SEE?
It's not, sir. It's not scientific. It's outright wrong, actually.
Yeah.
But I am saying there is nothing else we can do.
Yeah, of course. So when the student scores like 70 out of 100, yeah, can we take, so as you said, we will take 70% of performance in all the COs?
Yes.
No, all the COs, when they are not having equal weightage.
Yeah. Even then
that 70%, can it be distributed based on weightage?
No, that's the problem, sir. Actually, any method you do is bound to be incorrect because it is not based on the true state of affairs.
Yes, sir.
So when you break it down based on the relative weights of the COs, you are using some other method which is equally subject to criticism.
Yeah.
So what we are suggesting is that make it as simple as possible, just treat it uniformly, and any difference anyway is captured in the internal assessment.
Yes, sir.
So take it from the internal assessment. You assume that that will give you the correct picture. So that is much simpler, because anything you do is bound to be wrong, because we are not getting the information. So unfortunate it is, but that is the scenario. So much simpler is to treat it uniformly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Sir, we'll just take a last question of Nirmala Balakrishnan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sir, good evening, sir. Yes. I Nirmala Balakrishnan. I have one question, sir. Sir, regarding this, when we map COs and POs, we are mentioning strength of correlation, whether it is a high, moderate, or low, like that. In that case, when we do that is attainment computation, how to take it out, sir? How to consider that one? That is one question. And another question is, shall we give equal weightage to the assignments and also for seminars and all, similar to CIAs? This is my question, sir. Please.
Yeah, I'll answer. The first question is again a full session, but I'll just give in a nutshell. What you do is the attainment which is computed based on the COs, that is the attainment of POs computed based on the attainment of COs, is scaled based on the correlation strength. If the correlation strength is 3, it is taken as it is. But if the correlation mapping strength is only 2, it is scaled down 2 by 3. And if the mapping strength is only 1, it is scaled down further as 1 by 3 of this attainment. So basically, the mapping strength is used to scale the computation of the attainment of PO based on the attainment of COs. So that is how the mapping strength is to be used. That is one. Second is the weightage that you give to different kind of instruments will depend upon the regulations that are enforced. And if you have the freedom to use them appropriately, then it is based on the design, how you are planning to design your assessment. Based on that, if you have the freedom, then you can decide what weightage to give for each component.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So with this, I thank you so much, sir, for your time, and it was a really wonderful session and the interaction with all the participants.
Thank you, sir.
With your permission, we all, as a Mastersoft, we come up, like you mentioned in the last couple of slides, that the ICT tool is certainly an benefit, because this COPO attainment and all those calculation part, on one hand, it's a tedious job. Generally, institution does it through Excel and sparing these spreadsheets. So we come up with certain platform wherein all this attainment calculation is seamlessly happen, and the head of department or the concerned teacher within say half an hour, they can, if everything is available with them, or within a week's span's time, they can actually for their course they do this attainment. So I'll just showcase one small presentation, a quick demo of just 5 minutes. I request all participants, I will not take more than 5 minutes of yours, but it will be really benefit. And if you are interested, or your institute is interested, you can do contact me, or I will also post my details onto the chart. If you could see the presentation, the screen. So we are having the outcome OBE platform with us. So here I am logged in as a head of department. So for example, a head of department of the institution or the program coordinator, what kind of features are provided in the platform. So there is one thing called as OBE setup, wherein as a head of department, we can set up the vision statement of the department, mission, what are the program educational objectives, then the mapping of mission with PO and PSO, and the PO mapping, course outcomes, and in fact the COPO mapping. So I'll cover one by one. So very first thing is as a program coordinator or as a head of the department, I can create the vision statement of my department, the mission statement of my departments, wherein I can have a multiple mission statements. So I can add on a multiple mission statement for my particular program for my department. Then as you know, the department offers various programs. So let us say a computer science engineering program. So for this program, we can add the program educational objectives. So certain program educational objectives, we can add it. Once a program educational objectives are been added, we can map them on, we can map the POs with the mission statement onto the scale of low, moderate, and high, which is say 1, 2, and 3. For our program, we can also define the program outcomes. And whenever we are defining that program outcomes, we know that inherently the program outcomes are, they are inherently came from the graduate attributes that we are expecting from our student. So you can define the program outcomes, later on the program outcome and even the program specific outcomes, and we can tag with them with the concerned graduate attributes. The mapping of program outcomes with the program educational objectives. So again, you can map it onto the scale of low, moderate, high. Then we know that in a department, there are a lot of courses which has been offered by the department. Say, for example, if I consider principles of programming language as one of the course, I can add the course outcomes for my course. So CO1, CO2, CO3, and to which Bloom's taxonomy level it belongs to. And once the COs are been added, I can also tag, again, I can map the CO with a PO onto the scale of low, moderate, and high. So once a program coordinator does this activity, there it comes a faculty login, and faculty login, the faculty has to do only the attainment, the question paper creation and the marks entry. So here I am logged in as one of the faculty member now. So as a faculty, I can see my dashboard for my subject, whatever subjects that has been allotted to me. I can see the attainment dashboard. In the academic segment, I will create the question paper. I will do the marks entry, and further I will go ahead with the attainment process and the attainment reports. So as a faculty, I'm taking this principles of programming language course. So for this course, so these are all the assessments that we have planned for that course, and we can create a concerned question paper for this assessment. So question 1, to which CO it is tagged, what is the Bloom's taxonomy level, and what is the marks, what is it a compulsory, is it optional question. Once it is done, we can also have the marks entry for that created question. So here we can go ahead with the marks entry, and when the marks entry is done, we go ahead with the attainment. So we'll first define the target. Now once the target is defined, you can go ahead with the attainment process for that subject. And so like here I have already processed the attainment. It will also showcase that is there any gap or not. So for example, if your target is 90% and say if you could achieve only 18%, so what is the gap for it? And you can also plan the certain action proposed to bridge this gap. And when it comes to an report, you will get all the reports. So one is the subject-wise attainment report of your course, and another one is the PO attainment report. So for example, this is I'm generating one of the subject-wise report of my section. Say for example, as a teacher, I will be interested in my subject report. So it will just generate a subject report of the course which you have taken, the overall attainment percentage. If there is any gap, it will also showcase that for that CO, how many students were there, how many has attended, what was your target, what was the attainment, and how much is the gap. And you can also have the bifurcation individual student wise. Similarly, it also gives you a flexibility wherein you can also get your PO detail. So since the subject is mapped with a PO, you will also get the PO attainment report for your subject. So again, this is all calculation. So it's not that something is hidden. All the calculations are shown over here, and whatever is the average PO attainment, it is over here. Similarly, as a program coordinator or as a program head, I will also generate for the entire semester. So here I'm generating as an entire semester report. If it is for all the subjects, then you can generate all the semester reports. In a similar manner, there is a gap analysis report. And similarly, we do have indirect attainment. So this is a quick overview of the platform that we have. And certainly this platform is a benefit to any of the educational institution to overcome this cumbersome process of all these attainments and calculations. So if you are interested, and we can schedule a dedicated demo for your institutions. I'm sharing my details onto the chart with everyone, and at any point of time you can connect me with me or WhatsApp me. I will be always available. And couple of queries that participant has asked, that how they will be getting the certificates. So yes, the feedback link I have already shared with the chart. One more time I will share it into the chart. So once you fill up the feedback form, after that, maybe on tomorrow or maybe on Monday, we'll share the certificate with you. And I guess there are no couple of queries that has been asked onto the chart. So sir, thank you so much for sparing the valuable time with us, and it was really a wonderful session, and even the lot of learning experience every time I listen to the speakers. And thank you so much, sir, for sharing the time.
Pleasure, and I wish all the participants the very best in their efforts. And please feel free to make use of the PPT in whichever you want. You want to modify it, feel free to modify, pick up anything, do it in whichever way. We are happy. The more people make use of the information, the more happy we are. No issues at all. Okay.
Yeah. So like sir has mentioned, after this session is over, once the feedback has been filled up, I will be sharing the presentation which sir has delivered, the presentation slides with you, so that you can always refer to those slides and make your assessment plans and the test items accordingly whenever you are doing for your subject. So thank you everyone for joining this session.
Thank you
So much, sir.
Thank you. So I leave now.
Yeah, sir. Okay, I'll in a minute I'll end the meeting for all.
Okay, then I'm leaving. Thank you all, dear friends, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so dear participants, if you are not yet given the feedback, I am sharing the feedback link one more time onto the chart. And if you are interested onto the our OB platform, you can always connect with me. I'm sharing my number onto the chat. We can arrange the demo of the even the accreditation data management, which is for NAC and also for OB for your institutions. So I am going to end the meeting for all. I guess everyone has received the feedback form link. Once we got all the feedback form links, the certificate will be issued based on the email ID which is provided. Thank you everyone for joining the session. I will be now ending the meeting for everyone.